LG USA has announced the official prices for its 2021 OLED TVs, including the C1 and G1. These prices are very competitive. So competitive, in fact, that some quarters think that the flagship LG G1 actually competes against Sony's step-down A80J OLED. Let's talk about this. Hello everyone, Vincent Teo from HDTV Test here. After a long wait, LG USA finally unveiled their hand, announcing the official prices for its 2021 OLED TVs. And these prices are actually not too far off the leaked prices I covered maybe a week or two ago. Let's start with the flagship LG G1 series with OLED Evo panel. The 55-inch model will start with a launch price of $2,200. The 65-inch model will start with a launch price of $3,000, and the biggest 77-inch G1 series will start at a launch price of $4,500, which I think is quite competitive. Now, you have to understand that for 2021, LG is not offering an 83-inch LG G1 series because the whole point of the G1 Gallery series is that it is wall-mountable in a flush-fit fashion to the wall, and an 83-inch model will defeat that purpose, and it will be too heavy, too bulky to fulfill that sort of purpose. So from that point of view, if you want LG's best technology, you will have to stop yourself at 77 inches. Next, let us cover the C1 series, which I expect to be the bread and butter, most popular model that LG will sell this year. And the 48-inch C1 will start with a launch price of $1,500. The 55-inch LG C1 will start with a launch price of $1,800. The 65-inch LG C1 will start with a launch price of $2,500. The 77-inch LG C1 will start with a launch price of $3,800, and the biggest new for 2021, 83-inch LG C1 will start with a launch price of $6,000. Next, I want to discuss the difference between the LG G1 and the LG C1. And the LG G1 will be using what the company is calling their Evo technology, and this is a combination of both a newer, more efficient OLED panel from LG Display and also the Alpha 9 Gen 4 AI video processor that is optimized to make the best of this more efficient OLED panel. And we go back down to the A1 series, which is the entry-level OLED from LG USA this year. Now note that they are not going to be offering a B1 series in the States. And you will probably understand why once you see the prices for the A1. So the 48-inch LG A1 will start with a launch price of $1,300. The 55-inch LG A1 will start with a launch price of $1,600, while the 65-inch LG A1 will start with a launch price of $2,200. And the biggest LG A1, which is the 77-inch model, will start with a launch price of $3,200. And based on these prices, I think you can see why LG USA did not offer a B1 series. So let's say if they started offering a B1 series, where is it going to slot between the 55-inch A1 and the 55-inch C1? So the 55-inch A1 will retail at $1,600. The 55-inch C1 will retail at $1,800. Does that mean that if LG USA started offering a 55-inch LG B1, that it will have to carry a retail price of $1,700, and it is too close between these models? And even now, I think that the A1 series, the price isn't really that much cheaper than the C1 series. Remember that the A1 series is limited to 60 Hz, so it won't have 120 Hz support and it won't have HDMI 2.1 support. So I think, for the smaller models, certainly, and even in the larger screen sizes, I think it is wiser to stretch your budget a bit more to afford the C1 series because it will give you the best picture processor that LG offers this year, and it will offer HDMI 2.1 gaming support. It will offer 120 Hz support for smooth 24 Hz motion and motion interpolation to achieve higher motion clarity as well. So from that point of view, I think that the C1 is certainly worth the extra money over the A1. Now, overall, I think these prices are extremely competitive, and I think they are actually not too far off the leaked prices that I revealed maybe a week or two ago. But because these prices are so competitive, certain quarters have started arguing that the prices for the LG G1 indicates that it is actually competing against Sony's step-down A80J OLED. So in case you don't know, Sony has launched two new ranges of OLED TVs this year, namely the A80J and also the A90J Master Series. Now the A90J has been touted to be able to achieve higher peak brightness due to the addition of a heatsink. And the argument of these people who think that the LG G1 competes directly against the Sony A80J is that the LG G1 will use the newer, more efficient OLED panel, which is marketed by LG Electronics as Evo technology, because it is a combination of the more efficient OLED panel together with the Alpha 9 Gen 4 AI processor to achieve higher peak brightness. And because the Sony A80J will also likely be using this more efficient OLED panel based on power consumption specifications, these people think that the A80J is directly competing against the LG G1 because, they both have the more efficient OLED panels, and the Sony A90J is actually a step up above the LG G1 because it has an extra heatsink. Now, I'm not entirely sure that is how that works, because from my point of view, both are the 4K flagship OLED. If you take the 4K flagship OLED from LG this year, it is going to be the LG G1, and if you take the 4K flagship OLED from Sony, it is going to be the A90J. Also, carrying a more efficient OLED panel doesn't necessarily mean that it will deliver a higher peak brightness, because it depends on how the manufacturer drives it, and Sony has traditionally been quite conservative in driving their OLED panels from previous years. If we look at, let's say, last year's A8 or even their seminal A1 or A1E OLED series. Now, from the early findings of my trusted colleagues who have tested both the LG G1 and the Sony A90J, I think, the rated peak brightness have been very similar, somewhere around 750 to 800 nits. And the thing is, these are both flagship OLEDs, and these have both been marketed to be capable of higher peak brightness. So I think, they should compete directly with each other. And another way of putting it is that, let's assume that the Sony A80J is using the more efficient latest generation OLED panel from LG Display, just like the Sony A90J. But even with the help of an additional heatsink, the Sony A90J has only been measured at around 800 nits after calibration to D65 white point on a 10% window. Now, given that the Sony A90J has been specifically marketed to be capable of even higher peak brightness, do you seriously think that, the A80J will be able to reach 800 nits on a 10% window after calibration to D65 white point? I think it is extremely unlikely because of the history of how Sony has driven their OLED panels, and also because of the lack of the additional heatsink. And the thing you have to understand about this more efficient latest generation OLED panel from LG Display is that eventually the company is going to roll out these more efficient OLED panels to all production lines to keep costs down. So this addition of a new green emitting layer and also the substitution of the hydrogen compound in the OLED material with deuterium, it is going to be happening to all OLED panels that originate from the Guangzhou factory sooner or later. So maybe even the LG C1, especially in larger sizes, will get these more efficient OLED panels as well. It doesn't mean that, the TV manufacturers who buy these panels will be driving the peak brightness up all the time. They can either choose to extend the lifetime of the display or choose to achieve higher peak brightness to sell to a more discerning crowd. So from that point of view, I think, in my personal opinion, is that the LG G1 competes directly against the Sony A90J OLED because it is flagship versus flagship, and it is going to be higher peak brightness advertised versus higher peak brightness advertised. And of course, I think, with Sony, there will be a certain brand name prestige attached to it, and they will have certain aspects of video processing that will be superior to LG. But LG OLEDs, they have always targeted gamers. They will have 4 HDMI 2.1 ports, and they will have working VRR out of the box. So I think, the jury is still out on which of these will be the better performing OLED in the long run. Of course, until I get my hands on a Sony A90J review sample, which doesn't seem to be any closer because of a lot of delays, here and there. But let me know what you think, whether the LG G1 is really pitched at the level of the Sony A80J, or the LG G1 can compete against the Sony A90J in terms of an overall package. For more videos on 2021 OLED TVs, I've created a playlist here if you'd like to click on it, and I will see you in the next video.